Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast, learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 133, and I had the pleasure of talking to Beth Castrodale, a former newspaper reporter turned novelist with a deep passion in books and publishing, a senior editor at Bedford St. Martin's, and the founding editor of Small Press Picks. Her works include Marion Hartley and I Mean You No Harm, has earned critically acclaimed for blending humor, genre elements with warmth. Her fourth novel, The Inhabitants, was released in September of 2024, following an artist grant from the Mass Culture Council. I trust you'll enjoy this conversation and thank you for watching and listening. Hello and welcome to Beth. How are you, Beth?
Great, great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to get into this conversation with you to learn more about your success in writing fiction, but also the journey that it's taken you to get to where you are from a brain injury that you've had, but also this fascination that you have of ghost stories, which is interesting and intriguing from my perspective from the energetic world, but also intriguing in learning more about your own process, in addition to it's a really interesting career path that you've chosen to take, or should I say that has chosen you.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so I'm excited to get into that conversation with you. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for hosting me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So let's start off with a really big and bold question is, having gone through the experiences that you have, be it your own process and your own knowing of this is a path that you want to take in terms of writing ghost stories and writing, what has it taught you to believe about yourself in where you are now? And
Yeah.
does that belief define who Beth is at this juncture of your life?
Yeah. So, I mean, looking back on it, I think it took me a while to learn to realize this, but I just think it's come to me with older age is that I feel like, and this is probably maybe true for a lot of people, regardless of their path, is that resilience has been very important to me and stick-to-itiveness and persistence. And I think that you know, looking back, I think that shaping my beliefs, I think that I really believe that, and I think it could apply to most anyone that, persisting and even when things get rough, even when it's hard, I think that what's that old saying about effort? It's 99% perspiration in a way. I think persistence is so important. I mean, I don't know how talented I am really, or, whatever, but I feel like part of the big thing is keeping at it and even you know, um, when you have setbacks and so forth, and it's hard. Sometimes you need to take some downtime and regenerate and rethink and kind of figure out where you are. But I think just keeping your eye ahead and
Yeah,
persisting is just, I found that to be crucially important.
it is. It's very important to keep momentum for yourself and to recognize when is that tipping point for you. Because it's
Yes,
in the persistence, there becomes a tipping point where the consistency of it and you builds the momentum, and that momentum then transpires into something fruitful.
exactly. And it almost becomes a habit, sort of like, I mean, maybe it's like not the best metaphor, but brushing your teeth. You just think about it as something that like, okay, I did that and or this is rough. How am I going to figure out the problem? How am I going to move forward? And just trying
Mhm.
to keep an eye on not letting yourself get you know, talked down by your own doubts or external factors, I think.
Right, exactly. exactly. So is that a philosophy, be it attributes that you embody in your day-to-day being? And if so, are there other ones involved that allow you to do the work that you do?
Yes, definitely. It's become part of my everyday being. And I think that that some days are better than others, in terms of, my feeling, trying to be hopeful and persistent. But I definitely think it's part of my being. And I think there's so many things that are supportive attributes. And I would have to say one of the big supportive things is just my loved ones and friends, and just having that network of
Mm.
support and love and care. That is like, I mean, that's the most important thing to me in the world. So
Nice.
like having that backing is just so crucial. And I just feel so lucky to have good friends and family and my loving husband. And, I just, that is crucial. And even my lovely little pet dog, I love, just this little, the creature comforts and support are just so crucial.
Yeah.
And so I just think that that's been vital for me. Absolutely.
It's an important process. It brings us into who we are in our full capacity. When we can have people, places, and things that enhance and add to our lives, which I think is a beautiful
Yes,
gift. When did you realize
absolutely.
that these things, people, and places are crucial to you?
Yes, absolutely. And I think like sometimes I think that's another thing that comes with years, because I think when we're young, well, I'll speak for myself. I think when you're growing up and, I think especially maybe as teenage years when you're rebelling and you think, oh, my parents and this and that, or you feel like, you have maybe you're just kind of maybe not thinking in the bigger scope of how important the human connections are. Not to
Mhm.
say that all young people are that way. I don't mean that at all. I think that, but just sometimes I think just with age, sometimes you just come to appreciate how important that those human connections are,
Yeah, yeah. What was there a tipping point for you that really brought it home for you that these people are your anchors and such a strong support for you in your life?
I think it was more of a gradual thing more than, I mean, I think it was always there, that I valued those people so much. But I think, just with age, and then, sometimes there are points in life where, that I mentioned that I had a brain injury. And I think, that was an example of where, people were just so incredibly supportive of me. And it was just another reminder of how crucial those networks are. And I think even part of physical healing, like I do believe in the
Mm.
connection between the mental state and our connections with others, and our bodily health, you know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
think like that was part of the healing process too, for sure.
yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. What's what inspired you to get into this realm of writing ghost stories?
Yeah, it's funny. Ever since I was a little kid, I love writing ghost stories. I think like I actually found my mother had saved stuff that I wrote, and I think like starting back, I think it was like early in elementary school, I started making these books of about haunted castles and haunted houses, and I would illustrate them. And I was just fascinated. I think I liked scary things, and but then I think that I kind of wanted to make my own meaning out of the kind of stories and movies and things that I found scary. I thought, how would I write about or think about, a haunted house or something like that. So I had a pretty early start with it. So
Was it welcomed in your family as you was growing up?
very much so. My parents were very supportive. And it's funny, I mean, I look some of the ghost stories that were illustrated. There's one that has like, I think there was like an axe murder and one. And so I think some parents would have been alarmed, but I think my parents saw that, it was kind of my imagination, but they were very, very supportive. And my teachers were as well. So that was really
Yeah,
nice.
that's really interesting. Do you still, how do you keep that creativity and that desire and inspiration alive for you to continue to write? Because you've been writing for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it kind of comes and goes, and that, when I'm in the middle of a project, I feel like, and it's really going well, it's kind of like an out of body experience. Like it's the best, feeling to just kind of get lost in these fictional worlds. But then I have downtime, especially like when I'm between books and I feel like, oh, God, maybe I'll never have another idea again. And I can get kind of a little depressed. I mean, not seriously depressed, but just a little
Mhm.
down, like, oh, maybe I'll never have another idea again. But I think that I find that with myself, it kind of like there are fallow periods that are kind of necessary that like that even if I'm not writing a book right at the moment or writing chapters, that my brain, my subconscious mind is still kind of thinking, getting impressions and storing things. And I do think that even, and I hope, I mean that as encouragement for other people too. Like,
Mhm.
I feel like if you feel like you're blocked with any creative endeavor, give yourself some space. And it could very well be that, I mean, some of the biggest um, revelations I have in terms of how I should write something like a scene. Sometimes it comes to me when I'm not writing at all. Like I might be
Right.
washing my dishes or going for a run, and I think, oh yeah, that's a scene I need to do. So I feel like kind of be expansive about creativity and don't put yourself in a corner about what it means to be creating or be creative. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting process in terms of creativity. I've seen it in myself and I've seen it in other interviews that I've had done as well, in allowing that space, honoring oneself to create some space from doing something that is so normal, if you will, um, to allow that inspiration to come through by not doing and pushing, because we can often be in a place of pushing for results. And I gotta fix this. I have a solution for this. Rather doing something else so unconsciously, just as you said, unconsciously, it can unravel and
mhm.
present the solution because it's less push and energetic resistance that we put on ourselves during that process. So I find that really fascinating that you find the same thing for you too.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes when you put pressure, it just makes it worse. It's like it's like a spiral of what do you call it? Not, I don't want to say doom spiral, but you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
put more pressure on yourself and then you feel more restricted and less willing to create, I think.
that's right. That's right. And that's all an interesting process of allowing that to happen and allowing and trusting in that process too. Because trust is not always an easy process, especially when you're in the space of the craft of your word and the composition of them becomes your livelihood.
Yes. Yep, very much so.
So that in itself, I think, adds more layers of trust.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Trust is a good word for it, I think.
Because you've got to trust the right words are going to come when it needs to, in order for it to be fruitful enough for you to publish. And I know you've won many awards and you've published many books. So being in that space of trusting it's gonna land in a fruitful way,
Right. Yes,
right?
I agree. That's a great way of putting it.
Hmm. What are your intentions? So you get to explore all these beautiful ghost stories and all these beautiful storylines that you get to marvel in yourself. One, where does the inspiration come from? And I know I kind of asked that question before, but do you end up tapping into other experiences of yourself or experiences that you might have witnessed or seen on TV or through a movie or taken an additional storyline to another level in your vantage point? Like, how does that unfold for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like inspiration ideas come from so many different places. And, I often say that I don't like to write really autobiographical stories because I feel like I part of the one of the joys of writing is to go into a different world or a different character's head. But given that, I feel like it's impossible to write without drawing in some way on our own experiences of being a
Mhm.
human, right? And
Mhm.
experiencing love, grief,
Right.
problems with work, all these different things. So I feel like we always draw on our experience, but I find like I have, in terms of inspiration, I think like just to give some examples, like my first my first book was set in 1931, and it was about a corset maker who gets into kind of a scandal, and she tries to flee it for the country, and she ends up taking care of an aunt of hers who, and it just, kind of uncovering all these family secrets. And that started out actually because my grandmother actually wore corsets, and she was helping to run a farm. And I just thought, oh my gosh, how could you wear a corset in this like hot temperatures and doing all this work? And so I thought about like, what if I have this corset maker create this incredibly comfortable and lovely corset that's just like game changing. So that becomes like an angle in the story. And actually the whole character, I kind of had my grandmother in mind when I wrote her.
Mm.
So, and then, it wasn't my grandmother's story at all, but I thought like she was kind of the seed and the way that I sort of visualized it. And then, there were things about being a woman in the 1930s where, for instance, if you're a school teacher and you get married, you have to leave your job once you get married because you're
Mm.
considered, your husband is supporting you, you don't need a job. So that was true of my grandmother, and I kind of had that be an angle of the story too. So that's just one example. But
Right.
the overall point I would make is just that the ideas come from all these different places, and usually something will intrigue me, and I'll think, "Ooh, let me see if I can run with that in some way," and then I kind of go from there. So that's
Yeah.
just kind of one example.
That's a beautiful example because we do get to draw on experiences, right, for ourselves. And knowing the depth of relationship you have with your grandmother, whether consciously or unconsciously, you're still bringing in her energy, which I think is really interesting. And then you get to write and marvel with it and expand on it, which, what a gift. What a gift that you get to do that.
Yeah, it was nice. I felt like in a way that I was kind of, my grandmother has been dead many years, but I did feel when I was writing that I was kind of connecting with her,
Hmm.
and feeling for her what she was going through as a woman all those years ago, and
Yeah,
how difficult it was. And I really felt a new connection with her for sure.
yeah, yeah. It's beautiful. So, with you doing all this writing and being in this creative marble space, what are your intentions with the craft that you've harnessed for yourself, be it in the in the ghost story realm or in another realm? What is your overall intentions with your craft?
It's funny. There's kind of different things, I think. I mean, one of the things is, it kind of is layered. Like I think the first thing is for me to have a connection with what I'm writing about and feeling like it's meaningful to me and that I can tell a story that will draw me in. Like I feel like it's kind of selfish. Like a lot of people say, write for the readers. And I want to do that, but I have to start with something that interests me and that I care about. And then I
Hmm.
have to care about the characters. And then from there, I want to, my another intention is to really immerse myself in the process of creating. And that can mean, I think I touched on it earlier, where you get so involved and you see yourself in a scene in part, kind of creating the scene, and you almost lose that awareness of yourself. You're just deeply in that world. So I'd say kind of creating that I don't know, flow state is what some people call it. And
Hmm.
then probably the final intention is definitely connecting with readers, like hoping that readers will also kind of enter that world that I entered in my mind as I was creating. So kind of, their mind will make, they won't visualize the characters the same way. They'll probably have the setting, they'll see it a little bit differently in their mind, but I want them to feel that they're kind of in that world and really feeling they're feeling the empathy for the characters that I hope I felt when I was writing. So
Right, right. So it's almost wanting the reader to witness what you witness,
yes, exactly. Precisely. Yep.
right? Because we can be in a space of creating an environment, a storyline for individuals very strategically in what we want them to experience when they read a book or watch a movie or go to an exhibit or whatever that experience is. But for you, it's very much what you witness.
Yes. Yep. And hoping that I've written in enough depth and detail with care to like really have them have a meaningful connection
Yeah.
with the writing, and maybe even like when I write, I sometimes it goes beyond the fiction, and that I sometimes, I don't intend this. I don't intend my writing to have any kind of morals or themes, but sometimes I realize that sometimes I write about grief in my novels and how characters are dealing with it. And I hope it resonates with people's own experience, that maybe, there are some different realities or feelings around grief, for instance, that we all share, and that people might feel that connection and feel that it's something that they feel like, oh yes, I remember that, or I felt that, or I went through that, and they have that sort of connection with things that come up in the books. So
What is it about grief that you want people to witness and experience as they read your books and as you support them on it? What is it about grief for you?
I think it's one of those things. I think it's something that I explore in my novels, because I almost think that if you live long enough, you won't, the great misfortune of loving people is that you lose them and you have to face grief. And so I feel like pretty much everyone has to deal with that in some way. And I think that in my books, I've explored it in different ways. I had one person who felt guilty for a death, and so they were denying it. And what happens with them? What does it mean to come to terms with your feelings and face them? And other people who are just, looking, in my latest novel, what the character has recently lost her mother, and she's fascinated. She realizes that she's fascinated with these paranormal TV shows, which are hokey, and she's like, why am I watching these dumb shows? But she realizes that she kind of wishes that she would be haunted by her mother, like it's a desire to have that connection. So I just think the grief is it's so common, and sadly common, but also there's so many ways that people come at it, and so many different ways of processing it. So I think of like exploring that with my fiction it's been a really meaningful thing to me, and I hope that maybe for readers that it'll be helpful or meaningful for them too. So
What was the bigger grief experience that you had had in your own life that has now taken you down the trajectory of wanting other people to explore it?
yeah, it's funny. It's hard for me to say like the biggest at all, because there's been different ones, but I think like, I had a really cousin that I just loved, and we were really close, and just like close in age, and she died very young, and that was
Mm.
unexpected and young, and that was really, I think when older folks, you feel like you're terribly sad when you lose them. I mean, I grieve my
Right.
parents deeply, but
Mm.
when I lost them, but there's something about that unexpected bit. And then, also someone that you just are, their life is just cut so short. So I think that one kind of hit me pretty hard. So
Right, right.
uh,
Almost a tipping point for you to take this trajectory for the rest of your life to a certain degree in how you're
yeah,
going to write and how things are going to unfold in the storytelling process.
yep, definitely, definitely.
Is there a cathartic piece for you as you travel down these um, man-made stories, if you will, that you carve out and craft out for yourself, where it becomes somewhat cathartic for you in your own life experiences?
I think so. Yeah, I think like I don't set about when I'm writing to like, oh, this is therapeutic, or I'm processing my grief. But I think inevitably, if I'm really immersed in an experience of a character who's going through whatever it is, like grief or falling in love or any kind of thing that I'm trying to bring to life on the page, I definitely feel like I'm processing my own emotions. And oftentimes, I think with the grief bit, coming to finding new ways to think about loss in my own life. And I think it's been really helpful actually.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. How has that changed your being in life? Outside of reading, or be it through other relationships and other engagements and experiences, how has that changed you as in Beth?
yeah, I think especially as in the grief bit, I think especially as I get older and closer, I'm closer to the end of my life than, far closer to the end of life than the beginning. And I think sometimes it has made me think just how precious time is, especially with the people that we love, and how you just get such a new you get more of a perspective on your life. Like I mean, just as an example, like I think that, we all have to, work for a living and do this and that. But I think like when I was in my 20s and 30s, I thought like, oh gosh, I have to, I really have to be working like, all these hours. And like it's the most important thing for me is to like set myself up in my career and just like, and it was important. I mean, especially, just kind of set, saving money and all this sort of thing. But then as you get older, you kind of feel like, that one of the kind of cliche deathbed things, as someone said, the one thing I wish that I hadn't spent so much time on my, worried about my job. I wish I would have spent more time with people. And I feel one of the great fortunes is I'm learning that before my deathbed, like I know like, okay, money has to be made, whatever. But then I feel like the things that are so much more important in life, I know what those are and I want to focus on them. So that is such a huge gift. And I think
Right.
that, I just feel really grateful to have that realization and be able to act on it.
Yeah. It is a gift when we have so many big experiences in our lives, especially in the earlier part of our lives, as at that moment they could feel very detrimental and very daunting and very traumatic, if you will. However, I believe there is a silver lining in everything that happens. It's up to us to see it, but often those earlier experiences can become more fruitful as we get through life further.
Yes. We get a new perspective on them, I think.
hmm hmm some people say it can put us in a space of becoming wiser beyond our years or earlier beyond our years. And others is that we're just armed with more information as we get older. So it's a beautiful gift, I think, to having witnessed
Yes.
that. Yeah. During your journey of not only doing and being a writer, a creative ghostwriter, what was the impact of the brain injury that you had to get back onto the writing? What was that gap in between for you?
Yeah, it really, I mean, it kind of knocked me out for a while. I remember when I came to, I was unconscious for a while. And then when I came to, I had to have, physical therapy and all these things. And I remember I was able actually to get up and move around, but I had trouble reading. Like I remember I could read words. Like remember to look at a magazine article and I remember saying, there's a word, there's a word, there's a word. And I could read them, but putting them all together was difficult. And, I did have some, occupational therapy and so forth and physical therapy, but that kind of part of my brain, whatever is the reading and writing part, I think it just took so much rest and healing. And over time, I found like I was able to read fluently. And then, but I just I was in the middle of working on a novel at that point, and I just put it aside. And I thought, I don't think I'll ever get back to that again. I don't know. And then but eventually I don't even remember how or when or how this happened, but I opened up the file on my computer and I remember at some point I just got back into a scene and I kept going. And I think it was just a matter of, there wasn't anything magical, anything other than I think just rest and that in time, rest and time. And
Mm,
also, again, great support of many people in
right.
my life that I was able to just kind of get back. And it was such a joy because at some point, I wondered if that I would be possible again.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it is a gift being supported by others um, in any part of our lives, especially such a traumatic experience that you've had. What do you feel that there was a deeper layer to why that happened for you?
That's interesting to think about. You know, I don't know. I mean, this isn't anything like, metaphysical or anything, but it's more like I mean, one of the things I am is I run. And I think like, I just remember, I don't know, like some people said, because I remember like when I was I wanted to go for a run and when I was healing and people were like, no, no. And I actually snuck out one. I mean, they had me on the treadmill, but I'm like, it was a beautiful fall day, and I'm like, I'm just going to go for a run around the parking lot. And I just went for a little run. It wasn't any big deal, but I wonder if just like I just my body was ready to go in a way, even if my brain wasn't
Mhm.
quite there. And I don't know if something about the we talk about the mental state affecting the physical state, but I think this was also the physical state affecting the mental state that I think my
Right.
body, I was in reasonably good health given all that had happened. And I think just the drive to get back running kind of helped spark
Yeah,
that's a theory. I mean, probably neurologists would have
sure.
different, people in the science and medicine would have different takes, but my personal experience was that maybe that was at work. So
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting how we get to listen to those intuitive nudges. Just like you got an intuitive nudge, be it loud as a child, writing those growth stories. But nevertheless, it was an insight that you received that took you down a trajectory to take action in a certain way.
definitely.
What would you say to individuals who are potentially inspiring to be writers? What
Yeah,
what
I
what
mean, I
wisdom and
think,
advice would you share?
yeah, I mean, I think like, I mean, I think like the one thing that they probably already know this in a way, but I think like one of the best things you can do is to read as much as you can, especially if there's a type of story that you want to tell, like for instance, ghost stories. Read them and you kind of learn about the different moves that writers make. And it kind of opens up the potential of where a story can go. And, I think like some people keep a journal. I don't really do that, but however you want to do it, just kind of track if there's some ideas or sparks that come to you in your
Mhm.
day that you think, wow, like the thing with I was telling you about my grandmother, like I think, oh, that my grandma's corset, I could write something, just kind of stash those little seeds away wherever you can, and then just kind of, get started. And sometimes I feel like even, kind of shut off your critic and write and see where it takes you.
Right.
And I think with time, I mean, something that personally I think was really with time, you'll probably, if you want to get something, especially if you want to, if it's all private stuff and that's all you want to do is just kind of explore, you don't need this, but if you want to get something published, you definitely will want to get input from,
Right.
critics, or, if you're taking a writing workshop, maybe at college or just a community writing workshop,
Mhm, mhm.
or I'm fortunate to have a nice community of writer friends who they'll share constructive criticism. So I
Good.
think however you do it, that's a really important part of it. And try not to get discouraged. I feel like, I think with writing, if you want, especially in the publishing realm, like everyone gets rejected, everyone gets, feedback that they're like, oh man, that kind of hurt. And like I just feel like it's part of the game, but I also feel like returning to the earlier point, just try to persist and think like everyone has those rough moments, every writer. And sometimes with writing, if you have that community of writers, it's such a good thing. You have moral support from them too, because sometimes you just need to talk about, oh, I had a rejection today, and they're like, oh man, I did too. It just kind of
Mhm.
supports you to know that you've all gone through it.
Yes.
So
Yeah. So community, community, community is what I'm
totally,
hearing,
yes,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. But get
Yeah.
your community, find your community for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's pretty valid for many industries. Um, of individual paths that people can go on, be it in the arts, be it in the business or whatever sector it's been around fellow-minded people.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like it's funny, like if you can find them too, like if you're starting out as a writer, like maybe, you at your local library, maybe there's a writers group. Like if you could find your little niche where you'll find people that have similar interests, and maybe sometimes like I know people are like book wherever book lovers are too, like
Yes,
if you try to, I think you'll kind of find your people at those places.
that's right. That's right. I think yeah. It's thinking outside of the box of where are these people gravitating and perhaps also following one's own intuition and thinking, what is it that drives them? Is it the bookstores? Is it the library? Or is it another community group of gathering people?
Right.
Listen to your own intuition of where that's going to guide you and lead you to as well, I think is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what's next for Beth? I know congratulations are in order. You published a book yesterday, so appreciate that. So congrats. What else is
Thank you.
next for you?
I'm about two-thirds of the way through a new book. So,
My
and
goodness.
this one is you know, it's kind of set on a farm that's still in my family in my mind. It's a novel, it's fiction, but I have it. It's the main character is a woman she's the last one surviving to try to hold on to her farm, and all these forces are kind of conspiring against her. So she's trying to keep things going. So yeah, so that's one's been. We'll see.
Wow.
Hope I can get it finished before too.
Yeah. How many hours do you spend on crafting a story? Because I would imagine it goes through a number of reiterations.
It does. I mean, I think for the first novel that I wrote, it took me years and years and years. But after that, it takes me like probably 2 to 3 years to get like a draft of a novel together. But then if it gets accepted by a publisher, gosh, I would say it takes like at least 2 years because you're kind of in the pipeline. Um, you get signed on, and then there's the editing process and the design process of the interior and the cover and
All
proofreading
that.
and
Mhm.
kind of that stuff. So it's a long game. So, just as a rough guess, I think from the time you start, and I didn't even count like after you write the book and you're trying to submit to publishers, that can take a long time because sometimes they could take at least 3 months to respond to a manuscript once you send it
Mm,
to them.
right.
So if you add all that together, I mean, gosh, it could take like from the time you set down your pen to write your first line to the time you get published, if you're lucky enough to get published, I think it's at least 5 years, 6 years, something like that, at least for me. So it's
Wow.
a long, long process.
What do you do, or what have you found that allows you to keep the momentum to stay the course? Because staying the
Yeah.
course for 5 years is a long time.
Yeah, I think like it's always good to have other stuff you're working on too. Like I find that like when I'm sending one novel out, I like to kind of be having something else on the burner because I feel like if it's so like waiting to hear back about, from publishers, and you can get so sidetracked and worried about that and upset. And I feel like sometimes it's good to have something else that's kind of has excitement and just kind of, I'm very much like kind of a type A planner person. So I always try to have like my to-do list, and I try to like from each day, and then for a week I like maybe it's just an illusion that like is planned, but I like to at least have that idea of something that will keep me moving forward.
Right.
So I'm a big
Right.
list maker.
I think,
That sort of
yeah, I
thing.
think there's a lot of people out there. I'm like that too, for sure. Yeah, it's an important process because it keeps us accountable for ourselves. And I know there's many different methods and techniques out there. So as long as we figure out one that works for us, that's all that matters, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I think it's at least it's maybe only a psychological help, but it's even if it's just that, I value it. So
How do you keep the storylines independent? Because you've shared you do a number of different, you have a number of them ongoing at any given time. How do you keep them separate without them all merging together?
yeah, I mean, it's pretty. I think when I'm writing a story, I'm so much in that world that it's kind of like I don't really have too much of a problem with that. I mean, I remember sometimes that things will happen. Like I'll have a name. I'll be like, oh man, that's similar to a name in my other novel. Like some little details like that. I'm like,
Okay,
oh, I can't have that. Or
right.
um, but in terms of like actual storylines, I hope, or I think, and I hope that I'm pretty. I find it's not a problem to keep those distinct usually. So
Yeah,
fortunately.
it's good. That's good because yeah, sometimes it can perhaps merge, I would imagine, possibly. Yeah,
Oh,
exciting.
definitely.
So
Thanks.
what else is it that you're excited about, not only about writing, but in terms of maybe a future projection that Beth is inspiring for?
Yeah, I mean, I think like just I hope I can keep, definitely keep writing and hopefully get things published. But also, I mean, as I was talking about personal connections, like I hope that I can, just hold on to do what I can to maintain those connections. I mean, they're definitely the most important thing for me. And that's it. And then I have other things that I'm doing, like, I'm volunteering and that sort of thing that I like to keep
Mhm.
going and doing that.
Good.
But yeah, the people equation for me is probably the most important thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Ultimately, as human beings, that's what we're here to have, right? Is have
yes,
this human connection. So
I
beautiful.
think so.
Well, I'm so excited about your growth stories, and I think it's quite a skill and a talent that you've definitely mastered in terms of being able to carve out and craft out a storyline that's enticing and engaging enough for people to print, publish, and buy off the shelf and devour page to page. So I commend you for that, and thank you for sharing your story, regardless of the the experiences of life that you've had in terms of your brain injury, which could possibly be, dare I say, a positive experience because you're still doing what you're doing and what you loved. So I think
Yeah.
there's a bigger reason behind that. But nevertheless, I appreciate you sharing, and thank you so much, Beth, for sharing your
Oh, thank
story and
you.
sharing your
Thanks for
time.
the great questions. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. You're welcome. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.